Hey, Chad Carter here with chadcarter.net and learnhololens.com. And we're working on the third part of this tutorial series of getting a bouncing ball to run on the HoloLens. Now, we actually have already accomplished that goal in the first part of this tutorial series. We created the bouncing ball that you're seeing here, this red ball, and we create the plane and the ball bounces on the plane. So we can see right here. And we added some bounciness, physics material added some bounciness, and obviously we added the red material that had the red color to it. And that's what we covered and brought in the actual HoloLens camera and talked about that. That's what we did in the first part of the video, or the first part of the tutorial series. The second part of the tutorial series, we then took this project and we deployed it on both the emulator, the HoloLens emulator, and on the HoloLens device itself. So technically we have a bouncing ball running on the HoloLens. But we want to add some more things to it. So this week we want to be able to reset this ball. So when I hit play here and the ball falls and it bounces, several times, and then it stops. Well, I mean, the demo is over. The experience here is over. The bouncing ball no longer bounces. I could, inside the scene view, I can bring it up again and then let it bounce. And it will continue to bounce. But there's nothing inside the game itself that will let me reset that ball or put it in a different position. And so that's what we're going to do in this tutorial, is be able to say the word reset and have the ball reset. Or inside the editor, be able to hit like the space bar and have it reset. So that's what we're going to hit in this tutorial. So let's go and get started. To begin with, I'm going to create a new folder in here, call it scripts. And inside the scripts folder, I'm going to create a brand new script, C# script, and I'll just call this reset object. I'll open up this reset object script. Right now the Visual Studio is loaded and we have the reset object script here. We want to make another method here, a public method. So I'm going to say public void, and we'll call this reset position. Let's go ahead and save this. Go back to Unity. We're going to drag this reset object onto our bouncing ball itself. So now our bouncing ball has this reset object script on it. Of course, it doesn't do anything yet. So let's go back to Visual Studio and actually build out this function. Since I've applied this to an object, in particular the bouncing ball, when I type in game object, that's going to refer to the object this script is attached to. So it's going to refer to the bouncy ball. So I can say gameObject.transform.position, and that's going to get and even allow me to set the position of the game object, which in this case is the bouncy ball. Now I could come over here and say, okay, where's our ball currently located? Well, it's at position 0, 2.25, and 5. So I could say, okay, well, set the position to new vector 3 of 0, 2.25, and 5. Right? And I could do that. And that'll be fine. So when I called this reset position, it would actually reset the ball to that very specific position. That's not exactly what we want to do. What we want to do is when we hit reset, when we call this method, that the ball will kind of reset in front of the camera so we actually see the ball. So the ball is always, when we say reset, wherever we're looking, that's where we want the ball to show up. Okay. So what we're going to do there is say, we're going to set it to the camera's the main camera's position. So again, it's camera.main.transform.position. So we're trying to set the game object's position to the camera's position, the main camera's position. But of course, if we just do that, then we're still not going to see the ball. It's going to be put right at the camera. And so because of culling and backface culling, things of that nature, we won't see any part of the ball. So we don't really want it right there at the camera. We want to use the camera as its starting point, but then we want to add some other values to it. So instead of just being right at the camera, we actually want to be like, let's say, above the camera, because we want it to fall and that we can actually see it fall. So we'll say transform.up. Okay, and this would put it like 1 unit above the camera. So right above our head when we're wearing the HoloLens. But again, it's still going to fall like right down on us, and we wouldn't be able to see it. So we actually want it not just 1 unit up, but let's say 1 unit in front of us, right? So we can say transform.forward. And now this would be 1 unit above our head, the camera, and 1 unit in front of us. Now, and that would be totally fine. I actually want to make it so that through the editor, I can specify how far forward in front of us I want it. And I could do the same thing with the up, but for now I'm just going to always have it as just 1 unit above my head, and I want to be able to specify how far forward I want it. So with that, I'm going to actually multiply a value of distance. So how far, and I could actually call this forward distance if I wanted to, right? And up here then I can say serialized field, and this is going to be a float forward distance, and we'll just say three units forward at this point. And what that would actually let me do, if I wanted to, and in fact, so I can go and do this just so we'll have it here. So we can say serialized field float. How about gloat? Float upward distance. Could say up distance, but anyway, upward distance, and we'll just say 1F because I just want to be 1 in front of me. But again, that would actually let me do this number then, say times upward distance, right? So we're setting our game object at the main camera's position, but we're going to set it up 1 unit, and we're going to set it forward 3 units. Okay, so we'll save that. Come back over here to Unity, and if we look at our reset object over here when it updates, you'll see that it actually has the forward distance of 3 and the upward distance of 1 now. And we could actually modify this if we wanted to. And that's why we made it a serialized field. Now by using serialized field, that exposes that member variable, that member field, to the editor. A lot of times you'll also see, and in fact I do it quite often myself, something like public. Int some value equals 2. And when I save that and come back over here to Unity, you'll see that it'll show up here in the editor. So the end result, whether you use public or whether you use serialized field, is the same. If I just said int not in viewer, right? So if I save that, it doesn't matter how long I wait, it's not going to show up inside of Unity because it's private. By not putting any modifier on here, it's considered private. It's the same thing as just actually explicitly typing in private. Okay, so having public or serialized field makes it show up in the editor. And a lot of times I'll use public because the vast majority of people know what that is. But the true correct way, if you will, from a programming standpoint, is to use serialize unless you explicitly want this member field to be accessible by other scripts, other objects. And so when trying to keep your code clean, it can be beneficial to do this. But let's say I had some kind of a game manager or whatever else where I want to let it modify the forward distance, then I would want to make this public. In which case, the way I'd actually do that is, of course, just turn around, make this public. And from a naming perspective, I'd actually prefer to have that as a all caps, or not all caps, but title case, rather than camel case. That, to me, this signifies this is a public member that can be accessed by other scripts. In this case here, it's really simplistic. So I'm going to try to do it, if you will, the right way, and just have a serialized field with a forward distance of 3. And we'll get rid of the sum value because that doesn't matter. And might as well get rid of the update because that's not being used. We could get rid of start. Let me point out something real quick here on the start. Notice in the bouncing ball right here, this reset object has a check mark beside it. which means that I could either enable it or not enable it. If I come up here and get rid of start and save that, notice this checkbox goes away. The checkbox is gone because start is no longer on there. Therefore, there's no hook from our code to be able to enable or disable that script. No, we're not actually enabling or disabling it. So in this case, it's totally fine. But I did want to make that point there, is the start method, if it's not inside of your mono behavior script, then you will not have a checkbox here where you'll be able to enable or disable that through code, for example, or even in the editor itself. Okay. All right. So we'll save this reset script. We haven't actually modified any of the code since we talked about it. And again, just go ahead and build again. Make sure we're all good there. Control-Shift-B is what I'm doing to build. But we haven't actually called. We don't have anything that actually calls this script. So we want to be able to, say the word reset or hit the space bar and have it actually call that. And that's what we're going to do now. Inside the HoloToolkit, there is a keyword mapper. So I can actually type in keyword. I said mapper, I meant manager. There's a keyword manager. And you'll see this is like keyword and key code drawer. Here's a keyword manager scene. Here's a keyword manager script. And this is really what I want. So it's not a prefab. It's just a script. So I can come in here and say create empty object. And just for consistency, I'll actually call this keyword manager. And I'll reset this to the main position 000. It doesn't really matter. It's not a visible object. But I'm going to then drag this keyword manager script on top of the keyword manager. So now we have a keyword manager that came from the HoloLens toolkit, the HoloToolkit, that we can easily use. And this is super simple to add in voice recognition to your holographic game, app, experience, what have you. So we have keywords and responses. It's an array. We just want really just one command. So we'll say one, and this command is going to be the word reset. So I want to say the word reset. That's going to be my keyword. Or I want to hit the space bar. So by clicking on the key code here, I can hit the space bar. And by either saying the word reset or hitting space, I want to take some action. And it's saying, hey, well, what action do you want to take? Your list is empty. So I'm going to hit the plus sign right here. And now it's like, okay, what do I want to run? Well, I want to pick an object. And the object I want to pick is my bouncing ball. Now that I've picked that object, what function inside of this bouncing ball do I want to call? Well, I'm going to call the reset object because, again, the bouncing ball has the reset object script. So I can go and actually select the reset object, and I can then select the reset position. And that really is all there is to adding keywords to your HoloLens app, demo, or experience. It's pretty fantastic at how easy the HoloToolkit has made that. Now, the reason why this showed up, the reset position on the reset object, is because, back to the whole modifier deals, we actually put in the word public on reset position. If this was not on there, if we left it off, which defaults to private, or we explicitly put private, then this reset position would not show up in this list for us to be able to hit. So when we went to reset object, reset position would not be in here. And the other methods and fields that you're seeing are just default things that are in mono behaviors. Okay. So now I'm going to save the scene and save the project. And we'll clear out the search thing here. And if I hit play, we'll see the ball bounces. And then I can hit spacebar, and when I do, it's going to reset it because I'm in the editor. So I hit spacebar, and then it just reset it. Now, it reset it based off where my camera is. So notice over here, I'm just kind of looking out in the void. And so I hit spacebar, and you see it's coming over here. So let me move my camera back some, hit spacebar, and it's going really, really fast right now. So you can't even see it. When I'm hitting spacebar, it is resetting the thing, but the ball itself, we take a look at the ball, look at these numbers as soon as I select the ball. It's just flying. And if I hit the spacebar, it's going to reset. And you can kind of see over here the ball is coming, but it's just flying. The velocity on this thing is really high right now. So let's go ahead and go back to our script, and instead of just setting position, let's also set the velocity and even the rotation. So we'll say the game object, and not the transform this time. We're actually going to get the rigid body component. Remember, we added the rigid body in the first tutorial, the first part, so that it would have physics, so it actually would have gravity. And on that rigid body component, we then have the velocity property. And we're just going to reset that to 0, because we don't want it to have any velocity. Therefore, if it falls and it's falling and falling and falling, I want to be able to say, reset and have the velocity go back to 0. So it just starts with the initial velocity of 0, and it'll just fall at its normal pace. And while we're in here, it's not super important for this ball, because whether it has rotation or not, it doesn't really affect it. But what you might want to do is say, well, the other thing I want to do is set the rotation. So besides the velocity, well, I also want to set the rotation so it doesn't have any rotation. Right? And in this case here, we'll just use the quaternion identity, which in effect will reset the rotation. So it won't have any rotation either along the X, Y, or Z axis. So now when I save this, go back to Unity, we'll hit play, and the ball will fall. And I can kind of move my camera down to look at it. And I hit spacebar again, and it'll fall again. You notice it kind of fell over here because it fell 3 units in front of the camera. Right? And that fell all the way off the world. Right? So it's falling, it's falling, it's falling. But now I can kind of come back over here, hit spacebar again, and you notice that it's not. The velocity was totally fine. Even though it had a massive velocity because it's falling off the world, when I hit reset again to reset that velocity back to 0. Okay. All right. So of course I didn't actually say the word reset because in the editor, unless the microphone's explicitly hooked up where it can hear you on your computer, then it's not going to do that. But in the emulator and in the HoloLens itself, it will actually do that. So let's go ahead and deploy this again to the emulator. I'm just going to show it running in the emulator. I'm not going to go through the whole deployment process again because we covered that in part 2 of the tutorial. So I'm going to switch over to the emulator and we can see it running there. Alright, the emulator is loaded and we see it's deployed. So it'll run here on the emulator itself. Reset. And there's the emulator listening to my voice command to actually reset it. Reset. Reset. And that's where we'll wrap up the tutorial for this week. Next week, we'll actually get into spatial mapping. We'll remove the plane and let the ball bounce in the actual room where it can understand that, this is the floor or perhaps the couch or the chair, and it will bounce around the room understanding the real world environment. So that's going to be next week. So I hope you will join me for part 4 of this tutorial series of getting a bouncing ball running on the HoloLens. Thanks for staying with me this far into the tutorial, and I look forward to seeing you in next week's video.